Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is October 1st, 2022. All right, new month, so we're in a new Bible. We're going to go back to that New Living Translation, NLT. So this is a dynamic translation, so thought for thought. Pro for that, it's really easy to read. This one is really good if English isn't your first language. You're talking to your children maybe, or younger people who don't have a sophisticated grasp of English, and I don't want to insult you with that, but you know what, this is more like the language that we use every day that we talk to people, not like the language that you're going to see in a scholarly dissertation that's going to make you run and go find your dictionary and have to look up every other word. You know, this one's more, like I said, more like how you talk. The con for that is because it's dealing more with the thoughts than the words, it can get a little bit far afield from the original language. So this is a good one to pair with something like an English Standard Version or a New King James Version or an American Revised, something that's more word for word, and then you kind of jump back and forth and you can say, oh, okay, now that's what the words say, and this is what the idea is behind it. So we're going to read today out of this one, Luke chapter 22, verse 47 to 23, verse 25 today. So where are we at Luke? This is the Passion Week that we're seeing, that last week of Jesus' life before he's crucified. We're getting right up to the ending part of it. This is his betrayal by Judas Iscariot. And then we jump into Peter denying Christ, and you see that poignant moment where he realizes, wow, Jesus was right. You know, and I thought I was the big kahuna in this movement, and I was going to be the one that everyone relied on. And you know what? And here I am denying him to anyone that I can get to listen to me, that I don't know him, I don't know him. And it's his fall all the way down that puts him at his lowest moment. And then when Jesus comes back after he's crucified and he's resurrected, that's when we see Peter really understand, oh, that's what this is all about, and he goes right back up to being the one that everyone depends on again. We see Jesus in front of Pilate. We see that Jesus, is innocent through all of these trials. There's nothing that anyone can say. In fact, they end up lying, and they end up twisting their own version of what justice is just so they can crucify him and put him to death. So this rejection of Jesus is complete, and it's not just a rejection of Jesus, it's a rejection against everything that they claim that they believe in to get this done. So they're so in love with their own power and their own might and their own importance that they're going to essentially condemn God to death before they'll give that up. And that's kind of the climax of the gospel. So let's go ahead and we're going to read Luke chapter 22, verse 47 to chapter 23, verse 25. But even as Jesus said this, a crowd approached, led by Judas, one of the 12 disciples. Judas walked over to Jesus to greet him with a kiss. But Jesus said, Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? When the other disciples saw what was about to happen, they exclaimed, Lord, should we fight? We brought the swords. And one of them struck at the high priest's slave, slashing off his right ear. But Jesus said, no more of this. And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus spoke to the leading priests, the captains of the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him. Am I some dangerous revolutionary, he asked, that you come with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple? I was there every day, but this is your moment, the time when the power of darkness reigns. So they arrested him and led him to the high priest's home, and Peter followed at a distance. The guards lit a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat around it, and Peter joined them there. The servant girl noticed him in the firelight and began staring at him. Finally, she said, this man was one of Jesus' followers. But Peter denied it. Woman, he said, I don't even know him. After a while, someone else looked at him and said, you must be one of them. No, man, I am not, Peter retorted. About an hour later, someone else insisted, this must be one of them because he is a Galilean too. But Peter said, man, I don't know what you are talking about. And immediately, while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. At that moment, the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Suddenly, the Lord's words flashed through Peter's mind. Before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will deny 3 times that you even know me. And Peter left the courtyard, weeping bitterly. The guards in charge of Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and said, "Prophesy to us! Who hit you that time?" And they hurled all sorts of terrible insults at him. At daybreak, all the elders of the people assembled, including the leading priests and the teachers of the religious law. Jesus was led before the high council. And they said, "Tell us, are you the Messiah?" But he replied, "If I tell you, you won't believe me. And if I ask you a question, you won't answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated in the place of power at God's right hand." They all shouted, "So you are claiming to be the Son of God?" And he replied, "You say that I am." "Why do we need other witnesses?" they said. "We ourselves heard him say it." Then the entire council took Jesus to Pilate, the Roman governor. They began to state their case. "This man has been leading our people astray by telling them not to pay their taxes to the Roman government, by claiming he is the Messiah, a king." So Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus replied, "You have said it." Pilate turned to the leading priests and to the crowd and said, "I find nothing wrong with this man." Then they became insistent. "But he is causing riots by his teaching wherever he goes, all over Judea, from Galilee to Jerusalem." "Oh, is he a Galilean?" Pilate asked. When he said that he was, Pilate sent him to Herod Antipas, because Galilee was under Herod's jurisdiction, and Herod happened to be in Jerusalem at the time. Herod was delighted at the opportunity to see Jesus, because he had heard about him and had been hoping for a long time to see him perform a miracle. He asked Jesus question after question, but Jesus refused to answer. Meanwhile, the leading priests and the teachers of religious law stood there, shouting their accusations. Then Herod and his soldiers began mocking and ridiculing Jesus. Finally, they put a royal robe on him and sent him back to Pilate. Herod and Pilate, who had been enemies before, became friends that day. Then Pilate called together the leading priests and other religious leaders along with the people, and he announced his verdict. "You brought this man to me, accusing him of leading a revolt. I have examined him thoroughly on this part in your presence and found him innocent." Herod came to the same conclusion and sent him back to us. "Nothing this man has done calls for the death penalty, so I will have him flogged and then I will release him." Then a mighty roar rose from the crowd, and with one voice they shouted, "Kill him and release Barabbas to us." Barabbas was in prison for taking part in the insurrection in Jerusalem against the government and for murder. Pilate argued with them because he wanted to release Jesus, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" For the third time he demanded, "Why? What crime has he committed? I have found no reason to sentence him to death, so I will have him flogged and then I will release him." But the mob shouted louder and louder, demanding that Jesus be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate sentenced Jesus to die as they demanded. As they requested, he released Barabbas, the man in prison for insurrection and murder. But he turned Jesus over to them to do as they wished. May God bless the reading of his word, and may God bless you. Bye.